that featured more than 70 top brilliant economists in a month-long conferencing, which talked about areas like financial stability, growth and finance, MSMEs, markets, trade, so on and so forth. In fact, this has been a very, very interesting month for us. Not only that, it's been a marathon, but also at the same time, the learnings that we derived from having to go through such intense discussions, we managed to come out with a number of actionable recommendations. So to say, India Economic Forum is not a picnic in the Swiss Alps. It's a lot of hard work, toil, perseverance in the blazing heat of Delhi. Yes, we also believe in serving specially curated, delectable food. We have seen Indian glitterati going through the World Economic Forum. But it is the India Economic Forum that sees the serious economists focused on India growth and Indian economy. There is no such platform that we find which is parallel to India Economic Forum. We have had the pleasure of Dr. Manmohan Singh, Dr. Vivek Debroy, Mr. Montague Singh Ahluwalia, and many more luminaries from the field of economics speak and address the India Economic Forum during this 1 month long, I would say, a festival of knowledge. It also hosted a LITFest, an economic LITFest of economic literature, which is first of its kind in the country. Generally, that is the kind of literature which stays in the libraries. It doesn't become mainstream. And those 11 conferences that happened alongside have been a learning for our audiences, discernible, and at the same time informed. We also have the guidance in organizing the India Economic Forum of the CEOs Association for Inclusive India, which is what we call CAII. It is our industry voice of all the CEOs coming together, saying that what is it that can we do for the country to make it more inclusive. And that has been led by Mr. Kulmeet Bawa, President CAII, who is MD and President of SAP India. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining this session today and being part of the celebration and successes and achievements of those luminaries who have made India better, gone an extra mile. And believe me, that when we hear the contributions made by such domain experts, we only say that it is not very difficult to look for such people, but it is extremely, extremely difficult to look for the contributions, which is what they have made and gone unnoticed, which is what we bring to the surface. So that's been our endeavor. So today's session is going to be featuring the economic achievements, economic literature achievements, public service achievements, and at the same time, the MSMEs. So I request you to give a big hand and join me in welcoming these luminaries who are going to be facilitated during the day. With this, I invite Mr. Samir Kocher for his opening comments.
Thank you, Gurusharan. And as you know, you're all Scotch Parivar, you're family to me. And I've known you for years. And I have been endorsed as the most blunt-speaking person by none other than Mr. Arun Jaitley. So pardon the way I talk, but that's me. When Rishi Sunak rises in the British Parliament to present the budget, he's allowed to have a gin and tonic to fortify himself. I have learned, the best practice in the world, and I fortified myself with one old monk, just one, and Diet Coke. And since, I have published 18 books, I would like to talk to you about, through the prism of my books, because I'm sure you read none of them. So, I had written a book called The Untold Story of Indian Reform, 1991 to 2016. So it was on 3rd of December 1989 when Mr. VP Singh, Prime Minister of India, rose in the Parliament and said, our coffers are empty. Cut to December 1991, VP Singh is no longer there, Chandrasekhar is the Prime Minister, and he sends Dr. C. Rangarajan, then Deputy Governor RBI, with the Chief Economic Advisor to the Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha, Mr. Deepak Nayyar, to IMF to work out a bailout deal for India. And while they're sitting there and negotiating, the Chandrasekhar government falls. And IMF asks them, which government do you represent? And Dr. Rangarajan tells them, you don't worry about that, we will take care of it, you talk about the deal. And the deal did come through. So if India is still here and today, it's thanks to the economists. These are most, underappreciated community of people in India. And, you should say that, you should listen to all economists, but do what you want to do. I don't think that's true. Economists have a very important role to play. So reforms were unleashed because of this balance of payment crisis, and we are all here. And that beautiful story, what Montague did, what Chidambaram did, what Dr. Manmohan Singh did, what P.V. Narasimha Rao did, is captured in that book. And if you are intrigued enough, buy it, it's available online. Then we had the Mumbai attacks in 2611. So after the reforms till 2611 was some of the highest growth years of India, and then we had 2611, and we had to move Mr. P. Chidambaram to Ministry of Home Affairs instead of Ministry of Finance. I have no political affiliations, and I have no reluctance in saying that from there on till he came back to the Ministry of Finance was the darkest period of Ministry of Finance. We possibly had the most underperforming finance minister ever in Mr. Pranab Mukherjee. By the time he came back in July 2012, Mr. Chidambaram came back, it was too late to do anything about the economy, and the stage was set for Prime Minister Modi to come in. They knew that economy was their bad point. So at that time, Congress was attacking the economic credentials of candidate Modi, who had not even been declared candidate then. It was September of 2013 when Mr. Modi called me. I remember it was Gandhinagar, Mahatma Mandir. And he said that, all these Congress fellows and Chidambaram specifically saying that my knowledge of economics can fit behind a postage stamp. What do you think about it? And I said, Mr. Modi, I think your knowledge is about the same, only the approach is different. He's more economics driven and you are more governance driven. And there and then I decided to write a book called Modinomics on his request. And the theme of Modinomics was inclusive economics and inclusive governance. And it talked about the Gujarat model and how economics and governance worked together to bring about the miracle that was Gujarat at that point in time. No one questioned his economic credentials for several years after that. After he took over, in the Modinomics series, in the quick succession, I did 2 more books. First was Modinomics, which was about the Gujarat model and how he used governance and economics together to make Gujarat a star state. And it was a star state even as per our ratings based on outcomes because of the projects we had studied. In August, on 15th of August 2014, when there was a panel discussion on one of the TV channels and I was invited and they're discussing what will the Prime Minister wear, I said, forget what he's going to wear. I think he's going to be targeting poverty. And on 15th August 2014, he talked about the Jan Dhan Yojana and he launched it. In September 2014, which was a month after he announced the Jan Dhan Yojana, I came out with a book, number 2 book in the Modinomics series. It was called Defeating Poverty, Jan Dhan and Beyond, which laid out the entire roadmap of where Jan Dhan ought to go, whether it's DBT, whether it's JAM Trinity, whether it's focusing on loans to MSMEs through Mudra Yojana, whether it's targeting women beneficiaries. All these factors are actually documented and recorded then, much ahead of them happening, and that's the roadmap that the Modi government followed. In early 2015, I came out with the third book in the series, which was called Digital India, Developed India. It was an edited volume, and it had a lot of recommendations, including the JAM, the direct benefit transfer, and it kind of laid the roadmap for how Digital India panned out from 2015 to 2019. One innocuous recommendation in that book, so while a lot of recommendations did good, one innocuous recommendation in that book was that we should extinguish currency and move towards the digital rupee. What I meant was a CBDC, a central bank given digital currency. What it got translated, I don't claim responsibility for it at all, was demonetization. I had nothing to do with it. But the silver lining moment of all of this was the UPI movement. And I still hold that the bigger mistake than demonetization was remonetization. Having bitten the bullet, we should have just stayed on the task. Just the velocity of money would have pumped up GDP several percentage points. Then in early 2019, I had the audacity to write a book called India 2030, again an edited volume where we talked about this $10 trillion economy dream by 2030. This was, I think, in December of, it was January of 2019 I did it. Mr. Jaitley immediately picked up the theme, and in his February budget, his entire budget was on 10 trillion economy by 2030. Now Modi ji wants to do things in a hurry, so when he did the actual budget, because 2019 was an interim budget, he said 5 trillion by 2024. Well, we all know that COVID happened and there was an aftermath, and all that is not happening. And that has been the focus of discussion. With the India Economic Forum, we've returned a lot of recommendations which we'll be sharing with you shortly. But essentially, India Economic Forum this time has focused on how do we get back to a situation where very scarce investments, because one thing is very clear with the last budget, that government is looking at the savior, infrastructure as the savior of last resort. We've had India Economic Forum, a lot of economists agree with it, that that's the right strategy. There are many who do not agree with it and say we should look at health, education, human capital kind of issues, because that is going to give us better. So while that debate rages on, the fact that we are going to be focusing on infrastructure and huge investments are going to get into it is the focus of my next research. And there is this beast called incremental capital to output ratio. We have to keep a hawk's eye on it. So when I come back and talk to you in the second part of this conference, I'll talk about where are we on Gati Shakti and infrastructure. With that, I invite Kulmeet Bawa, President, CEOs Association of Inclusive India. And he is the moving force behind whatever we do. He essentially also pays for the lunch, but he's a thinker in his own right, and he talks about sustainability, climate change, economy, a lot of things which are outside the box for SAP. So Kulmeet.
Thank you. Thank you, Samir. It is as interesting as ever. My big takeaway was the old monk comment, but I of course, kudos to you on the 18 books and the way you took us through it. Look, I'm not very sure that economists don't get their light under the sun, but look, a very good morning to all of you, and it's an absolute pleasure for me. This is a very august gathering, and I was talking to Mr. Ahluwalia and Mr. Bibek earlier, but it's an absolute pleasure to be part of such luminaries and leaders who have, to me, definitely helped shape India through the last few decades and giving us the India that we are so proud of today. So thank you for that, and a warm welcome again to the India Economic Forum, as well as the LITFest 2022 today. I'm excited to be part of this celebration for a variety of reasons, but most of all, I guess it's the underlying vision of inclusive growth that we are standing for here today. which is super critical. And just to talk about SKOCH and to talk about Samir, from my view, and I think a lot of you will agree, there's been a very persistent, or they have been a very persistent voice of change as far as India gets to shine on all fronts. And when I say all fronts, I mean all facets, whether it is social, whether it is financial, whether it is digital. And through the India Economic Forum, I guess SKOCH has very clearly sparked a dialogue by getting our policymakers year on year for decades very close to the reality and the real issues that India faces. And that is super stuff. Just the essence of getting the best of minds to brainstorm on some real issues, I think is fantastic. So kudos to you, Samir, and to your entire team for doing this year on year consistently for decades at a stretch. Look, I'm also excited today to be co-presenting the LITFest awards that Samir mentioned to some very highly respected stalwarts for the country. And my compliments in advance to all the award winners. I guess there would be thousands and thousands of readers that would get immensely benefited from your works and from your prints of wisdom, if there is something like that. Gursharan mentioned the CAII, or the CEOs Association for Inclusive India. Look, we remain very closely associated with SKOCH, even from a vision perspective. So we do share a common vision with SKOCH. We collectively strive to hone India's path as far as achieving the Atmanirbhar growth is concerned. And we talk a lot about that these days. And we do that by providing policy inputs and alternative narratives to the government, essentially keeping socio-economic development front and center as our key theme when we talk about it. And a platform like today very clearly lives up to the motto that the CII has, which is Jahan Sabse Pehle Hai Bharat. So I think this is a great forum to live up to the inclusiveness that we are building from a corporate world with the CEOs Association, and we are very proud of what we are doing. My last point, because Samir talked about it, we talk a lot about sustainability and climate change today, and I guess the India Economic Forum over the years has always dealt with or taken on head on, front and center, a lot of important issues that we are grappling with in the country and globally. And very clearly, when it comes to sustainability, through my lens, it's perhaps the most important issue that is impacting us, or it's the most important human mission for this century as far as we are concerned. And all of us today are experiencing the impact of climate change in some way or the other. So from our perspective, and I wouldn't get into the SAP or the corporate lens, but we don't have the time any longer to decide whether we want to hop onto that bandwagon, whether we want to make a difference or not. I think that time is gone. So environmental consciousness is super critical for all of us, and it's no longer a matter of choice. And the silver lining from my lens and the way we look at it, whether I look at corporate enterprises today in the country, or even if I look at consumer India, I think there is definitely a recall. There is definitely more of a responsibility that is being built up in the country today. Now, you could call that an optimistic approach, but I see that every single day, whether in my conversations with enterprises. We are not just talking about it, but today we are starting to walk the talk. We are starting to measure our footprints. We are starting to work together, because this is definitely a team effort or a team game. We are starting to work together to build a vibrant ecosystem or a vibrant environment. And I would therefore appeal, if there's one appeal for this gathering before I leave, is we must ensure that we take this on front and center for every policy, every decision, management decision making that we are making in our respective fields, because it is very, very important. So there's no point of huge, tremendous, humongous economic growth if we don't have our environment or our planet in place. But with that, once again, a warm welcome to this event, and look forward to interacting with you as the day goes by. Thank you very much, and over to you, Samir.
Well, thank you, Samir and Kulmeet, for presenting your vision of a Sashakt or Samradh Bharat as we move along. And with this, I invite both you gentlemen to kindly join me on the stage. So the morning moves on with the announcement of LITFest Awards. And I have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Viral Acharya, who is joining us online all the way from the United States for his book, Quest for Restoring Financial Stability in India. Is Dr. Acharya online?
Hi, I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are able to hear you.
Are you able to hear
Great.
us?
Thank you so much to the SKOCH Foundation. It's a great honor. I really did not expect it. So especially because the book had been out almost 18 months back. But I imagine the theme of fiscal dominance of central banks is now going beyond India and becoming a global phenomenon. So I'm glad you recognize the book, and I hope its message is carried forward and help us make better policy goals. Congratulations also to all the other members. I guess I can figure out their names very soon. Thank you so much.
And your award is with me. You can carry it whenever you're visiting.
Backstage, the story behind India's high growth years by Montek Singh Ahluwalia. Backstage is not a memoir, but an insider account of the making of India's economic policy between 1979, when the author returned home from the World Bank, and 2014. From a middling performer to a growth dynamo after the reforms. It's a story of substantial success. The book notes three things: the approach during the initial years to change as a combination of gradualism called reform by stealth. Next, growth as part of the dismantling of the license Raj and liberalization. And three, the first 6 years of Modi government as beginning with a bang. The optimism that the book alludes cannot be ignored. Congratulations.
Notice I'm standing on my toes so that I can see. Congratulations, Goldie. Thanks very much. Thank you. And I fondly remember Isha on this occasion, and a few words from you, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Abhi. Thank you very much. Having written a book, one is always pleased that A, someone's read it, and B, that having read it, I assume you've all read it before giving me this award, decided to give me an award for which I'm really grateful. To touch a lighter note, I'm not sure whether it's interesting because Viral, who's written a wonderful book, by the way, and you were absolutely right to choose him for the award. He made a very interesting comment. His book is all about complaining about fiscal dominance of central banks. And he said, well, I suppose I'm glad you've given this award now that this has become a global practice. So, in effect, you awarded him for a book which has now been globally ignored. Now, I don't know whether the award you're giving me is similarly indicative of what you think is going to be the global reaction, but whatever. Thanks a lot. Just a light touch. I thought it was very cute of Viral to acknowledge this fact. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Just to add to that, we are also awarding Shrena's book. She just went on, after we promoted the book, she went on to win the SKOCH, the Times of India LITFest award. And maybe in your case, it's going to be the Nobel Peace Prize or something like that. Or economics.
All right, there we go with Shrina Bhattacharya's book, which is Desperately Seeking Shahrukh, India's Lonely Young Women and Search for Intimacy and Independence. Shrina sets the stage for an interesting discourse on the personal portrait of the average Indian women post-liberalization. Desperately Seeking Shahrukh is an author's exploration of struggles and the unheard aspirations of women in India when it comes to realizing their dreams and idea of love. She states the trope of a unreliable narrator and an observant reader will immediately know reference is drawn to the recently coined term self-gaslighting behavior.
Congratulations, Shrina. This book was recommended to me by my dear friend Yamini Iyer, and she told me the title of the book. I said, I'm looking for some feminist economist literature. And she says, look at Desperately Looking Shahrukh. And I was like intrigued, why is she suggesting a romantic novel to me? So I was, desperately looking for the romance in that book, but it was pure economics. Rest, Shrina will tell you.
Thank you so much. I realize a book titled Desperately Seeking Shahrukh is an odd one in this mix. But I just want to tell you a bit about the origins of the book. In 2006, I was given a standard survey questionnaire. I was a research assistant for a project, asked to collect data on the wages and working conditions of women. Seva was actually the organization I was working for. And I have to actually thank Ratna Sudarshan, Ranana Jhabwala, who really were the original, I think, those who nudged me on this path. When I started asking the questions, the women I was speaking to were so bored because they'd actually answered questions about their wages, working conditions nearly 5 times over. And so they said, can we take a break? And we took a break, and as an icebreaker, I started asking all of them who their favorite actor was, and suddenly everyone started talking about Shah Rukh Khan. And as I moved from the slums of Ahmedabad to the forests of Jharkhand, villages of Uttar Pradesh, where women are working in different home-based industries, earning about a quarter of minimum wage, it was fascinating to understand how this process of economic liberalization, he starts to embody this for so many women who perhaps don't understand budget speeches, but see that there's a poster or there are more products suddenly which are being marketed. And through these conversations about an actor, we discover, I followed these women actually for nearly 12 to 15 years, their economic trajectories and personal trajectories. You learn about their lives. It's a mad project. It tries to include film, cinema, data, economic theory, and I really want to thank, I have a PhD committee for the book, starting with Professor Devki Jain, Professor Abhijit Banerjee, and Professor Lan Pritchett. I just want to thank them because I think without them, this just would never happen. And thank you so much, Sameerji and SKOCH, for acknowledging the book. I think you don't just acknowledge this book, you acknowledge anyone who's looking at the economy in very unconventional ways. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much. And do read this book. It's not boring economics.
Unshackling India, Hard Truths and Clear Choices for Economic Revival by Ajay Chibbar and Salman Anis Soos. On economic revival and re-engineering, changing the role of the state, developing human capital, and unleashing competitiveness to be future ready. Moving away from finding faults with governments in meddling in certain matters or not done enough in some others, Unshackling India reposes a great deal of faith in the potential of Indian economy, despite deep-rooted problems in agriculture, industry, or even the services sector. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Ajay. And we are missing Salman Anis Soos, who is not here, but such a wonderful book and very appropriate in the unfolding situation in Ukraine and, you know, what we're going through and what we're going to focus. Tell us something about the book, please.
So, thank you so much for the award. You know, I discovered that to write a good book, 50% is to get a good co-author, and 50% is to get a good editor. So my co-author is not here today. He's unfortunately not able to join us. He's in Abu Dhabi. But the editor is here, Swati Chopra of HarperCollins, the other half that got the book done. You know, Salman and I are from the same college, St. Stephen's College, and we also worked at the World Bank. But we never met each other till March 2020, when a common friend invited us both to a golf game, and that's how we met. And I really enjoyed talking to Salman. And then came the pandemic, and we decided to write a book, this book that is being awarded today. And just after, this is in June of 2020, in July of 2020, after playing several bad rounds of golf, I got a hole-in-one in golf. And I called Salman and I said, Salman, do you realize we are going to get the India Economic Forum LITFest award for this book that we are just about to write? And here we are. Thank you so much for this award. And the book kind of looks back over 75 years. It's written in a very simple style that both our fathers could understand. But it does look over for the next 25 years and hopes that at least our children and our grandchildren will inherit a more prosperous India. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. So Ajay talked about the 250%. He forgot the third, which is to find a LITFest which is going to feature the book and award it and make sure people read it. So that's where SKOCH LITFest comes in. We are a LITFest for boring books, but very important books.
All right. So please stay back for a group picture. Monte, can I request you, Shrina, please join us. Rohan.
LITFest awardees, please. Deepak will come. While we are doing this, There have been 2 awards within Scotch. Gurcharan Dhanjal, of course, you knew for donkey's years. He's going old and senile. So finally we decided to kick him as a vice chairman. So he's just 2 days back taken over as vice chairman Scotch Group. Deepak Dalal, who's been with us for almost like 15 years now. And he's the guy who's always doing the backstage work. He takes over as managing director Scotch Group. Whatever we are is thanks to him. And I really mean it from the heart. But for him, the operations would collapse.
Congratulations to all the LITFest awardees, and with this I request Dr. Bibek Debroy to present his India Economic Forum keynote. IEF keynote, India Economic Forum.
Supposed to speak?
You're supposed to speak twice. It was on the agenda.
I didn't read it.
No, you don't need an agenda to speak.
How long am I supposed to speak for?
10 minutes.
Okay.
On Indian economy, India economy.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to attend a Scotch event. I've known Samir Kochar for years and years, although it's a rum thing when he decides to switch from Scotch to rum. Much of what happens at Scotch events is, of course, a lot of bull, as you can see at the back. But one thing has always underlined everything that Scotch has sought to do, including these events, including the magazine, including the awards, which is an emphasis on inclusion. There are many friends in the audience. I know some of them will be awarded. Several of them have written down the years. And amongst the audience present here, Montek is probably the senior most. In one form or another, they've all talked about poverty and inclusion. These two terms are related, but they're different. Poverty is an absolute notion. It has a bearing on whatever is the poverty line and however we choose to define the poverty line, which also requires data that one gets before one can go about estimating what percentage of the population is below the poverty line. Inequality tends to be much more contentious, but inequality fundamentally is a relative indicator. Inequality and perceptions about inequality not only depend on inequality in what, but inequality also tends to be a dynamic concept, or at least perceptions about inequality tend to be a dynamic concept. If I recall rightly, Montek himself said something like this in one of his papers. If I perceive that in future my lot is going to be better, if I perceive that my children are going to have a better life than I do, my perceptions about inequality tend to be different. Whether one is talking about poverty or whether one is talking about inequality, the more basic question to ask is, why are people poor? And no one is voluntarily poor. Certainly no one in the working age groups is voluntarily poor, unless the person happens to be disabled. So effectively it boils down to inclusion, or one definition of inclusion, which is to remove inequity in the provision of what broadly can be called inputs. They can be physical infrastructure, they can be social infrastructure, they can be financial inclusion, they can be technology, they can be credit, they can be access to markets. And then looking at this, to state the obvious, India is a very large country. India is a very heterogeneous country. And therefore, there is something that economists rarely pay attention to, which is that governance is also linked to the legal infrastructure. All of us as economists talk about markets. Markets are conceptual notions, but markets do not exist in a vacuum. Markets are not Azadpur mandis. The basic framework for a market is determined by the legal infrastructure, and I don't mean speed of dispute resolution and the backlog of cases. What I mean really is the Constitution. And the Constitution had a history. It started with the Government of India Act of 1919, and much of what we have in the Constitution today is based on the Government of India Act of 1935. What I particularly want to flag is the 7th schedule of the Constitution, which as of today has a union list, it has a state list, and it has a concurrent list. And these were based, as I said, on the Government of India Act of 1935. Whenever we are talking about inclusion, whenever we are talking about alleviating poverty, whenever we are talking about improving employment, we are also talking about the government not abdicating its responsibility. The government has to provide public goods, and I'm not using the expression public goods in the classic economist sense. And of course, the government also needs to subsidize to people who deserve beneficiaries. But when we say this, what do we mean by government? Because there are 3 layers of government. There's the union government, there is the state government, and there is local government. Whenever we are talking about public spending as economists, and typically several people will say, hey, look, we must spend 6% public money on education, 4% on health, 10% on infrastructure. But it's not simply about money and expenditure, it's also about the efficiency of that expenditure, and most of the items that we would regard as public goods in that loose sense are not delivered by union governments or are not delivered by state governments, they are delivered by local governments. And as everyone present here knows, the extent to which fiscal devolution and even decentralization of decision making to the local bodies, be it the panchayats or the urban local bodies, is left to the discretion of state governments. And my plea, because of my subjective interests, is the economist fraternity and sorority, I think, should pay greater attention to governance as determined and constrained by administration, which does not necessarily mean administration in Delhi or state capitals, but administration at the level of districts, administration at the level of the blocks, even further down. Because after all, inclusion is also about integrating the 125,000 villages out of the 600,000 villages that still remain somewhat marginalized. And on that inclusion agenda, I don't think there will be any disagreement amongst the economist fraternity and sorority assembled here, because that is what all these different people, and I'm familiar with not almost all their works, I think, have been writing about. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Debroy, for your insights on the inclusive growth of India and reflecting on our glorious past. This is time to move on with the announcement for India Economic Forum Awards for Economics. May I request Dr. Debroy to kindly join us on stage, Mr. Kocher. I have the pleasure of inviting Rama Baru, professor from Jawaharlal Nehru University for Public Health. Her academic pursuits have focused on health policy, international health, privatization of health services, and inequalities in health. She has published extensively on private healthcare and health services at school level in India. She is a rare academic with ground level experience whose expertise has been sought by the Government of India, World Health Organization, and Indian Council for Medical Research. She also engaged with UNDP and supported research at the Center of Social Medicine and Community Health, JNU, outside the confines of a medical college. Congratulations.
Congratulations. This is India Economic Forum and the awards are for economics. So we said that, and I am not an economist. Fortunately, I am a common sensist. So when we asked, and so is Vivek actually, so when we were looking for the award for public health, he recommended Rama Baru and her work.
That's not supposed to be public.
Well, between friends. So he supported, he endorsed. He was not the only one, there were many more. So when we spoke to Rama Baru, and she says, but public health is not economics. I said, listen, after COVID, I think it's the most important part of economics. But since you insist it is not economics, we're not giving you an India Economic Forum Award. We're giving you the SKOCH Challenger Award, which is for the social sector.
Thank you so much, Samirji and the SKOCH Foundation. It's an honor to receive this award. And it is a double honor because it is actually recognizing our center, the Center of Social Medicine and Community Health, which is outside a medical college located in the School of Social Sciences, where I've spent almost 3 decades. I also want to say that I've had the great privilege of mentoring several generations of students who have made this project really worthwhile. And to my family and all my friends here, thank you so much.
Now, as you all know, Rama Baru has a naughty husband. His name is Sanjay Baru, who wrote the book The Accidental Prime Minister. Sanjay, please join and tell us something about your wife. Come, we can all be in the picture together and you can say something nice to your wife.
Well, first of all, let me say that I was delighted that you've chosen Rama for this award. What I want to mention, which she has not mentioned and you have not mentioned, is that Rama is also a visiting professor at the China Normal University in Wuhan and came out of Wuhan 1 month before COVID and has escaped Wuhan. But she has an immense amount of work on Chinese healthcare apart from Indian healthcare. Probably the only public health person in India who's published a book on Chinese healthcare. So that's what makes me very proud of her work.
So with the full disclosure, like I had nothing to do with demonetization, she had nothing to do with COVID.
Professor Sudipta Mandal for Economic Policy. Of Indian states are amongst the few things that Sudipta Mandal does. He has been a senior advisor NCAER and was on the board of governors NIPFP, served as member of the 14th Finance Commission and chairman of the National Statistical Commission. All the institutions have benefited immensely from his expertise in macroeconomics, development economics, public expenditure and governance.
So congratulations, Dr. Mandal. I've had the honor and the pleasure of knowing you for such a long time. I've seen your work in Finance Commission and so many other places. A few words.
Thank you so much, Sameer Bhai. It's a great honor to receive this award, and it's also very humbling, keeping in mind all the very eminent persons who have got these awards from SKOCH in the years past and also on this occasion. I'm actually reminded of a very similar occasion maybe a month ago when the Indian Press Institute was making awards of this kind for very special journalists for this year. And in his keynote address, Mark Tully made these remarks that in the context of journalism, that it's very important that whatever you write is firmly based on evidence and that is also balanced. And I think this is something that also applies to the world of economic policy. I was not clear actually whether they're giving me an award for writing about economic policy or making economic policy, which is very brief in my career. But in either case, I think following a principle of being evidence-based rather than based simply on views and opinions and being balanced is something very important. Thank you very much.
Such a pleasure, sir. Yes. And you'd notice the different sizes of the awards. It just means we have a crazy designer who doesn't believe it's a nightmare for us to handle logistics and boxes for so many awards. It doesn't mean this award is smaller than the other. It's the same. All awards from SKOCH are the same. And while you're here, Mrs. Mandal is also here. May I call her? I mean, you've lived with this man for such a long time and you do a LITFest. And she asked me this interesting question, what is this SKOCH LITFest? Because she does Jaipur LITFest. And I said, all the books that you reject, we feature them in SKOCH LITFest.
I have to tell the audience, I'm not Mrs. Mandal, I'm Preeta Singh, I'm a partner. Sudipta is my partner and I'm very proud to be part of his life. But on the more important thing, I have to say that the 14 years that I've known him, this world of economists and economics, and every time I would go to a party, I say, Sudipta, why is fiscal such a oft-used word? But now I understand, and I'm really grateful to be part of Sudipta's life, and thank you very much for honoring him.
Mr. Siraj Hussain for Agriculture Economics. Of the Indian Administrative Service from 1979 to 2016. He served departments of agriculture, agro-processing, cooperation, food management and food processing. He was Secretary Agriculture and Food Processing. Several schemes of the first Modi government were formulated under his supervision as Secretary Agriculture. A prolific writer, he has authored several research papers on agriculture and the rural economy. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Raji. I have known you for many years. I think it started when you were in FCI. You did computerization of FCI and Russian started reaching. And that was, I think, even before you were JS or you were JS then. So congratulations, our association has been very long and I've been a very long-standing admirer of all that you've done for agriculture sector in India.
Thank you, Mr. Kochar. there are many economists in this room who have been writing on agriculture policy and agricultural economics. The recommendations are generally unanimous that we should have less subsidy and more investment, mostly ignored by the government, all these recommendations. So the next 2 years will prove whether even a win in an election can persuade the government to accept the advice of eminent economists. Thank you.
Congratulations. And Madam is also here. Mrs. Hussain, I presume? No. So this is the beautiful lady behind the brilliant work.
Thank you, Samir Bhai. As you have just mentioned, I have been behind him for decades now. And in fact, when he ventured into the field of writing articles, I was the one who used to do the proofreading. So,
Her spelling is still bad, huh?
so
She used the past tense, now it's deteriorated.
So that I think encouraged him to write more and more of it. And one thing which I admired about him, of course he's my husband, so I admire him for many more reasons, but about his writing, that I found that he has always been very objective, very, very objective. So I think that is what has taken him places in this field of writing, which he ventured after his retirement. Thank you very much for recognizing it.
Pleasure is ours. Yeah, and we understand, you know. Every morning she wakes up and says, Siraj, what is the stuff I have to edit today? And you have no choice but to write. Just to get peace in your life. No wonder you write every day.
Professor Ashwini Deshpande for Gender Economics. She is a mix of a theorist as well as a practitioner. Her work revolves around the economics of discrimination with focus on caste, gender, and affirmative action. A firm believer that whether it is farms, livestock rearing, or running grocery stores, the success of most such family enterprises is on the backs of unpaid family labor by women. The UN research project Women's Work Routes to Economic and Social Empowerment has immensely benefited from her accomplishments. Her focus remains on improving opportunities for women to enhance their economic empowerment. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Sameerji and SKOCH Foundation for this award. You know, being an academic is a bit of a lonely enterprise. You sit in your room in front of your computer and churn out numbers and write papers and hoping that somebody other than the journal editor is actually going to read them. So it's really very heartening to see that you know, somebody read the papers or at least some part of the results and decided that it was enough for an award. I have to mention that because this notion of inclusive growth and sustainable growth came up in the context of the environment, but I have to say that recently I was on a TV show and my opponent said, you know, you're not interested in the size of the cake. You're only worried about how the cake is going to be distributed. So, you know, what we have to recognize today is that the size is not going to grow if everybody, particularly women, are not going to be a part of the productive process. So all those of us who are worried about the size, know this, that if we don't include women as a part, women and other marginalized sections as a part of the growth process, the size of the cake is going to remain small and may even shrink. So,
Thank you so much. But husbands do matter, so do men, and her husband is here and so is her daughter. May I invite them to join us on the stage? How is it living with a feminist economist at home? Come. Few words.
Thank you, Sameer ji and the SKOCH Foundation. I'm of course delighted that Ashwini has got this award. I'm also an economist, but sort of a useless economist. I'm a theorist. But I, about 5 other people, read what I write. But of course, Ashwini and many of you here are different. You work on sort of the real stuff. I have seen how hard Ashwini works. While I'm watching cricket on television, she's hard at work on her computer. So I'm truly delighted. Thank you.
Thank you so much. How about you? You're in India.
Not at all, not at all. Not at all. I think the only thing I'd like to say is that it's appropriate that she's getting this award for gender and economics. I've watched her growing up and she practices what she preaches, and I couldn't be more proud that I am her daughter. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Professor Mahendra Dev for Development Economics. His work spans agriculture development, poverty, public policy, inequality, food security, nutrition, employment guarantee schemes, and farm and non-farm employment. With such deep-rooted focus on development economics, he has published over 120 research publications across such domains, including over 20 books. With such outstanding work on development studies, he headed the Commission for Agriculture Costs and Prices for Ministry of Agriculture. He is a votary of social sector schemes having positively impacted women's well-being, empowerment, and intra-household decisions. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Professor Dev. I have known him since, I think, 2008 when I was doing a film on Dr. Rangarajan, and I said, who are the people that are the closest to you? And Professor Mahendra Dev's name was one.
Thank you, Sameer and the SKOCH Group for this award. It's a privilege, for recognizing me for my work in development economics. In fact, I've started working on this inclusive growth, which many people, said. In fact, 2008, I published a book on inclusive growth, which Montec has released. But that time, in a lighter vein, we didn't know what was inclusive growth. Even the Planning Commission, the 5 blind men, like an elephant kind of thing. So maybe 5 blind men are the Planning Commission members that time, what was inclusive growth. But over time, of course, it's more getting recognized, and Vivek Debroy also mentioned, clarified some of the things, poverty, inequality, differences. But as Ashwini mentioned that, inclusive growth is also important for growth, because of the demand generated by the inclusive growth. So thank you very much for the recognition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All these awards that have been given to you and are being taken back will be handed over to you when you leave. Nicely packed, bubble wrapped, and in a box so that you don't break them.
I now invite Professor Radhika Kapoor for Labor Economics. Including poverty and inequality, labor economics, and industrial performance. For the last 5 years, she has worked on various facets of India's labor market, in particular in the areas of informal sector, the impact of technological changes on the world of work, and the measurement of employment and unemployment. She has alternatively focused on contract labor's strategic advantages to the organized sector. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Radhika. For an economist that looks like a teenager, her work is so profound. So profound. When she came, I've never met her face to face. Today was the first time. And I was not expecting this.
Thank you so much for this award. It's truly an honor, and I think it's an even greater honor to receive this award amongst this distinguished list of awardees. I'm particularly delighted and grateful to Sameerji and the SKOCH Foundation for actually having this category of labor economics in your awards, because labor economics actually doesn't get the attention that it truly deserves in the Indian policy discourse. It's something that needs to be front and center, because it's both, the greatest challenge that India faces and also the greatest opportunity, given that just 40% of our working age population is actually in the labor force. And it's something that is very underappreciated, and I myself actually did not appreciate the importance of this subject till about 7-8 years ago. And Mr. Ahluwalia has now left, but I should mention, and also because the theme here is poverty and inclusion, that when I came back to India and I wanted to do my research and work in a think tank, I was hired by ICRIER, and I went to meet Dr. Isha Ahluwalia, and I said, I only want to work on poverty. She said, what does that mean? So I said, basically, I want to write papers using the consumer expenditure survey data. And she said, I don't think that's a smart idea. If you really care about poverty, you should work on labor, employment, because a productive job is the best form of inclusion. So, she's not with us anymore, but I do want to mention that she played a big role in pushing me to do this. And I hope by putting in categories like this, many other young researchers will also want to work on these areas, which somehow get a little lost in the whole glamour of macroeconomic modeling. So thank you so much.
With you, they'll find a lot of inspiration, I can bet.
Mr. Ajay Thakur for MSME enablement. In capital markets, spanning India's biggest custodian to India's largest and one of the world's fastest stock exchange, Bombay Stock Exchange. Ajay has played a pivotal role in setting up the BSE SME and Startup platform. BSE today is the largest SME platform in India with 365 companies listed and many more in the pipe. These companies represent 17 diverse sectors that have raised an amount of rupees 3,844 crore with a market capitalization of nearly 50,000 crore rupees. Congratulations.
Congratulations. ये हम सब MSMEs का बड़ा भाई है. 55,000 crore market capitalizations for MSMEs. It's amazing. He's our last resort, our only hope, because no one else cares.
I'm extremely thankful to Sameerji and the SKOCH group. It's really a pleasure to be here. A journey which was started on no hope. Perhaps I was the only person who was self-motivating. And there was no taker of SME platform for the merchant bankers. It was not a big deal. And just after launching this SME platform, I thought that after 3 months, I have to resign from the stock exchange. But we keep on fighting, and we have a belief. We created a full ecosystem, new ecosystem. And let me tell you, in last 10 years, I have met 36,000 SME promoters across the country. And 10,000 charter accountants, 5,000 company secretary. And because of lack of financial literacy, we have only 365 SMEs listed. And let me tell you, another 60, 70 are in pipeline. But it's very hard to bring them on the SME platform. Still, we keep on working. But these 365 companies, from the primary market, they have raised 3,800 crores. And from the secondary market, they have raised another 1,500 crores. So we keep on doing this good job. And I'm hopeful that in the years to come, many of the people will get associated with the SME platform, because to give equity funding is the most difficult task. And that also to the SME promoters. We can talk so many things, but when it comes to giving the equity funds, the most difficult thing. But we keep on doing this difficult thing because we enjoy in that. And that's why BSE over last 147 years has created $3 trillion market capitalization and associated almost 10 crore investors with the stock exchange. So with these words, thanks a lot to you, Samir. Thank you.
What I would really like to know is from Mrs. Thakur, when he was meeting 36,000 MSMEs, how upset for you? Please come and share. Did he leave any time for you?
No, no. Thank you very much for recognizing me.
That is why he met 36,000 SMEs.
But let me tell you, in last 10 years, I think I had hardly spent time with my family, and I don't know how they grow old and what they are doing. But finally, she is giving them, good education, संस्कार वगैरह सारी चीज़ें दे रही है, और इसके लिए मैं इनका अनुग्रहित हूँ, और साथ में समीर जी आपका अनुग्रहित हूँ, क्योंकि अगर इकोनॉमिस्ट को इतने ऐसे रिकॉग्निशन मिलता है, तो मेरे ख्याल से स्टॉक एक्सचेंज ऑफिसर को तो मैंने कभी रिकॉग्निशन मिलते नहीं देखा. तो आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद समीर जी. थैंक्स अ लॉट.
रिकॉग्निशन आपका और आपकी वाइफ का.
Dr. Mohan Kumar for Trade Economics. Ambassador Mohan Kumar has had an illustrious career in the Indian Foreign Service lasting 36 years. The strategic relations and trade partnership between India and France grew remarkably under his watch during his tenure as the Indian ambassador to France. He was also actively involved in the Climate Change Accord of Paris in 2015 and has enormous expertise in the area of international trade and multilateral negotiations. Congratulations.
Congratulations. And Mohan ji, of course, represents two of the institutions that we work with very closely, OP General University as well as RIS, and he's done very good service, and he supported us in backing out of RCEP.
Thank you very much, Bibekda, whom I hugely respect. It's good to have you, sir. Samir ji, thank you very much for this honor. Look, I will not conceal from all of you that I am an outlier. I'm not a pure economist, and by the way, it's interesting. Radhika ji, who was one of the previous awardees, mentioned Isha Ahluwalia. I also want to do that. I met her in Paris, and it was she who told me, why don't you do a PhD? Your views on WTO are so clear. Mr. Montek Ahluwalia has left, but I must place on record, it's thanks to Isha that I went to Sciences Po in Paris, and I said I would like to do my PhD there even when I was ambassador there. And Sciences Po took 3 months to decide whether my thesis fitted into their Department of Economics or Department of Political Science. And finally, I think they said it's easier that you do it in political science. But really, my claim to fame, and I'm so honored by this award, my only claim to fame is that in the Indian Foreign Service, it's unusual to specialize in trade and economics. It would have been far easier for me, thank you, it would have been far easier for me to do something sexy like Pakistan, sexy like Russia, China. We have experts on those. So when I specialized in international trade, and you have to walk into the foreign secretary's room and ask for a posting, I remember doing it to one of the foreign secretaries, and she said, frankly, I don't know what the hell to do with you. You specialized in GATT, WTO. I can't send you to Geneva. That's an IAS job. I can't send you to Ministry of Commerce. You will be humiliated by the IAS guys. What do I do with you? So she very much wanted to kind of, tell me that, listen, how do you solve a problem like Mohan? So finally I said, there's one thing you can do. Repeatedly send me to Geneva. So fortunately she agreed with that. I spent 10 glorious years in Geneva, negotiating first with the GATT and then the WTO. And that meant, of course, compared to my batchmates, I became an ambassador almost 5 years later. But I think it was well worth it. And therefore, I really take this award very, very seriously. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much.
And to reveal a secret, he is the only one I know of who wrote the thesis by hand. Not only did he write it by hand, he wrote it with a fountain pen.
Wow. I hope the manuscript is safe somewhere.
It is still safe, and because I'm an old-fashioned bureaucrat, I'm 65 by the way, I color my hair, so don't get taken in. But you know, when we joined the Foreign Service, we were taught dictation skills. You have to dictate something to the PA. By the time I got on to doing my PhD, my PS was busy with other things, private secretary, but I had two of them, one of whom was actually playing cards all the time in Paris. I said, I'll write the thesis, all you have to do is type it out, just don't make any mistakes, because frankly, the quality of private secretaries that we had 25 years ago, we don't have them now. Now if you dictate, you'll have to dictate it 10 times. You know, it'll come back with all sorts of errors and so on. So I actually wrote it out. Thank you very much, Vivek, for remembering it. I share one thing with this great man, which is that we share a real fondness for pens. So I actually wrote it on Swiss stationery with a Mont Blanc pen, 500 pages. So thank you.
So that brings us to the end of the announcement of Economic Awards. Can I request all the Economic awardees to kindly come on stage for a group photograph?
So while we are doing that, he mentioned he doesn't color his hair. We don't have that problem, Amit and I, you know. We are always having a good hair day. He has none and I have none. And since so many of you mentioned Ishar, let me share my favorite Ishar story. Ishar and Montek, you know, as a part of our Lifetime Achievement Award, is that you're forced to have a meal cooked by me. This is curated by me, but that one you have to endure because I actually cook it. So they came home for that meal and Ishar was, you know, eyeing this bottle of pickle on my table. It was gobi shalgam ka khatta meetha achar, and she says, where did you get it from? And I said, this is a recipe from my auntie Prem, who taught it to my wife. It was a family secret. She wouldn't even give it to me. But somehow my wife managed to curry favor and got it. And this is originally from a person called Vadhava Singh in Lahore. And she said Vadhava Singh was her grandfather. And she went back with the whole jar of the pickle.
Next, public service award. We move on to the announcement for the Public Service Awards. And I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Iqbal Singh Chahal, Commissioner from Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation. He is a soldier at heart, serving as an administrator. Creation of war rooms in each ward, 24/7 tele-assessment of the gravity of the illness, allocating hospital beds to patients, active monitoring, and creating jumbo COVID facilities saved Mumbai. It was termed the Mumbai model. Chahal did not lose sight of COVID patients with other disease in need of medical attention, particularly dialysis. More than 2,000 such cases were reported, no lives were lost. Further, he halved the premiums charged on building proposals that resulted in an additional income of rupees 14,000 crores, resulting in a boom in the Mumbai property sector as well as creating thousands of employment opportunities. Congratulations.
He's the man who saved Bombay. I think standing ovation for that. We should all stand and clap for him.
Honorable Samir Kochar sir, Honorable Debroy sir, respected audience, I feel honored and privileged today to receive this honor and award for something which was not only my official duty, but also great service to humanity. You know, when I was suddenly put in as commissioner of BMC in May 2020, and the death rate in Mumbai had touched 7%, I knew, and I told my team, 100,000 people plus, I said, this is going to be a long-term war now. It may go on for years, unlike other government programs which we do some ad hoc arrangements and things go away in 2-3 weeks, floods or tsunamis or earthquakes. And we created 28 sub-models, all technology-driven, all working on autopilot. For example, 186 hospitals in Mumbai, 144 of them private, on a real-time single dashboard, IT-based, and all private hospitals in Mumbai, 100% of them were banned from admissions at their level or discharges at the level. We told them you will only treat the patients, everything you leave it to BMC to admit them and to discharge them. We created ward war rooms in 24 zones of Mumbai and converted Mumbai into 24 Mumbais, each fighting its own battle against COVID with only a common dashboard. The first thing which I did is in 1 hour of joining on 8th of May 2020, I said, we have to chase this virus. And everybody is shocked because those days people are not willing to come out. And the next day I entered the COVID ICUs, spent hours there. And then I did a march in Dharavi, which was on fire. Dharavi has 2.34 lakh people every square kilometers. The most dense pocket in the world. You know, Mumbai is the second most dense city in the world after Tokyo. What we did in Chase the Virus, we went, led by Commissioner, 50,000 of employees entered the slums of Mumbai, hundreds of them. And we started testing people at home, slum dwellers. Anybody found positive, 20 of his relatives, neighbors were picked up by force, put in buses, transferred to 3-star, 4-star hotels, 211 of them, 48,000 bed requisitioned. In 5 weeks, we transferred 1.46 lakh slum dwellers into 4-star hotels, 10 days free boarding and lodging. If somebody develops a symptom, he goes to hospital, otherwise they come back to the sanitized homes. Mumbai has hundreds of public toilets. Each public toilet has about 25-30 seats. We said this is the best place to kill the virus. We started sanitizing these toilets every 2 hours. So that next batch gets sanitized environment early morning and throughout the day. And what happened within 60 days, on 11th of July, WHO General Secretary said virus is under control in Dharavi, and Dharavi became a world-class model. You know, then we had changed the patient strategy. We said, right from the test report of the patient, putting him in the hospital bed, everything will be done by a BMC, nothing by the patient. And I must say that we are the only one city in the entire world, and today also, and I say with pride, that no city in the world has tried to copy us. You know, every test report which is done by a testing lab of any COVID patient doesn't fly to the patient directly from the lab in form of email or WhatsApp or SMS or hard copy. We banned it by an order that any lab giving positive report directly to the patient would be, his license would be cancelled. People went to Honorable Supreme Court of India, but we had our way there also. And we have handled 10.68 lakh COVID positive reports, which came only to us at midnight in a software. And even the day when we got 2,000 cases in a single day, not even one person at that midnight knew who's COVID positive in the city. Next morning, these 24 ward war rooms with 240 dashboards online with doctors, 3 shifts, they would declare open, announce to the patient by calling them that who's COVID positive. And immediately ambulances would go home, 1,000 of them, all on Uber platforms. They would ask for choice of the patient, and then the patient would be allotted bed at his residence. And the same ambulance will put him in the hospital bed. Whether it's Beach Candy or Leelavati or Nanavati or Hinduja, no hospital had a right to stop our ambulances. They had no right to admit patients. It was we who were admitting the patients. We told them, you just treat them. And when the patient was getting well, he was to discharge. We said no bill will be released to the patient unless it is vetted by municipal auditors. Only once we clear it, only the bill goes goes to the patient's relative. And we had no cases of overcharging in Mumbai. And after that, second was, look at the risk appetite we had. We handled 10.6 lakh COVID positive reports, not even one going directly to the patient. But with razor sharp efficiency, we ensured that no report gets missing. Similarly, crematoriums. Every crematorium in Mumbai, 74 of them was on a dashboard. Dialysis patients, we had the world's best dialysis online system. We had 10,000 people in Mumbai who were without kidneys, but we didn't allow even one to die for non-dialysis or even COVID beds. So what is the result? As a result of all this, in the second wave of COVID, we had 3.93 lakh people who became COVID positive, but we had a mortality rate of only 0.8%, lowest anywhere in the world for comparable city. In the third wave, again we had 3 lakh people who became COVID positive, but our death rate was 0.009%. Again, lowest in the world. And I always say that I'll fail in my duty if I don't salute my 100,000 team. 9,800 of my team members became COVID positive. 344 of them lost their lives, but the show went on. And I'm so happy today when I stand before you that it is because of my team that we could reach. And when you look back, it's a great satisfactory moment for me. And I always say that what Mumbai achieved in COVID, the same regime is now going on in non-COVID. You know, Mumbai is the only one city in the world where a 13,000 crore coastal road is built by a municipality. From own resources, no assistance from Government of India, Government of Maharashtra, or any bank. And in last 18 months, we completed 56% of the coastal road, right from reclamation to 26-kilometer road, 100% in the sea, Arabian Sea, 2 tunnels under Malabar Hill, 1 tunnel already done, and we are 3 months at our schedule. And a project the size of almost 13,000 crore will be completed in just about 28 months. And we are right now 3 months ahead of the schedule in this. But what our team did in COVID, I shall always be indebted to my team that they did better than anybody else in the world. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. We are so proud of you.
I now invite Mr. Sameer Sinha, Principal Secretary, Finance Department from Government of Assam. He is joining us online from Guwahati. Sameer Sinha was the architect of the Assam model of COVID management. Even before the virus reached the state, he took measures to expand treatment and testing facilities. These proactive measures helped in minimizing the contingencies. In his current position as the Principal Secretary to the Chief Minister, he introduced several reform measures to bring in more transparency in governance at the top level. He has played a central role in the implementation of Loan Waiver Scheme, Assam Microfinance Incentive and Relief Scheme. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Sameer. You are my brother at heart. You have been my co-conspirator for financial inclusion from your days in Department of Financial Services, Ministry of Finance. I remember the time when you were a young municipal commissioner, I think somewhere near Guwahati or and I had seen your e-commerce or e-governance installation. You kind of spearheaded that. Congratulations to you. This award is being conferred on you through the good hands of Dr. Bibek Dev Roy, Chairman, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India. Now you'd like to say some words for us?
Yeah, hi Sameer, hi Guru Saranji. It's a great honor. I feel extremely honored to receive this prestigious award. And I was listening to the earlier speakers, and of course many things we have been able to do. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be personally present to physically receive this award, as the budget session of the Assembly is going on and I'm supposed to be here. So my apologies for this. Yes, way back in 2003-4, I still remember that when I was DC of Kamrup, the entire team, Samir and then Tusharanji and everybody, all of you had come and we had talked about financial inclusion then, a good 20 years back. And we talked about many other things on the how to empower the rural women. And subsequently, in fact, when I got exposed to my working in the Department of Financial Services and also in the Asian Development Bank, in fact, we worked a great deal in this arena. And today in Assam, we have, of course, we are there is a conditional, not conditional really, in fact, it's a cash transfer, some kind of a basic family income Arunodaya scheme has been launched in the last 3 years. It's been running very, very successfully, covering around 22 lakh women, because we have been able to open the bank accounts, not only for this Arunodaya women, but also a sizable portion in the tea garden areas, which occupy good 20% of Assam's geography, and nearly 18 to 19% of our population in Assam. So there hardly any brick and mortar bank branches were there. But now, because of this consistent effort, we have been able to open bank branches wherever possible, ATMs, and we have been able to importantly open their bank accounts, and the managements of the tea gardens also, they have cooperated very well, and we have been. So as far as the network of financial inclusion is concerned, we have been in Assam. This is some success story. We have miles to go in this realm. And as far as administrative reforms is concerned, a slew of measures, in fact, in the last 10-11 months, we have been able to take on almost all in all spheres and all realms. And we are, in fact, as far as coming back to finance, Samir, I would like to tell that Assam was one of the, I do not know whether it was the first state, but to my understanding, it was the first state to launch e-budget way back in 2017-18, and a thing which we have continued ever since. And in fact, the entire as far as transparency in budget and disclosure and other expenditure is concerned, I think almost everything is there on the web portal of Finance Department. And on this front, we have been able to do quite a bit. Of course, coming back.
Thank you very much, Samir. I'll be seeing you in person shortly in Assam.
Yes.
And
yes.
Vivek, if you would stand next to the
just,
screen, and then we can get a picture.
Yeah. One last thing. In fact, I have been
you can keep speaking.
supported by young IAS officers and Assam civil service officers and Assam finance officers. So all of them have contributed in this to this cause. And so I am receiving this award with a great honor on everybody's behalf. So thank you so much. I feel very honored.
Thank you so much, Samir. God bless you.
Mr. D.C. Mishra, Deputy Director General from National Informatics Center. He has made extraordinary contributions in the promotion and application of e-governance in rural development agencies throughout India. He has played a very important role in formulating IT induction and adoption policy for computerization in rural development processes and improving internet connectivity in the hinterland. He pushed for rural communication connectivity through NICNET, a satellite-based nationwide computer communication network, and played a very significant role in policy formulation on the National Land Record Modernization Program. Congratulations.
Congratulations. No one has done more for digitalizing rural India than D.C. Mishra here. And he's very passionate and very driven. And he was the one who reminded me nationalism first when I was on a committee of Panchayati Raj computerization. Not that I need that reminder, but he was wary of private sector. This आप प्राइवेट सेक्टर के हो, तो हमने क्या प्राइवेट सेक्टर में देशभक्त नहीं होते हैं क्या?
Thank you, Sameer ji. Thank you, SKOCH Foundation, India Economic Forum, and LITFest. It's a really honor to be with Sir and you to be here. In essence, I started my government journey in '86, and I come from rural area from state of Uttar Pradesh. And I had seen information poverty all around. And trust me, from the day one, I was very passionate to do something so that I don't have to beg information on budget, work to be taken up from my Pradhan. And that has led to the different activities. And I got a right opportunity at the National Informatics Center from the government, full cooperation, and some of the constructive criticism and support in the last 2.5 decades. I mean, it dates back from the creation of Ministry of Panchayati Raj 2005, and prior to that, SKOCH Foundation has been encouraging people like us, new e-governance initiative, putting it into public platform, opening up for criticism, improving. So thank you for everything. I tried to give my best back to the rural society. Where do I come from? I look forward to continue this evening. Thank you.
It was an extremely difficult job. Imagine 30 years back, rural India and digital infrastructure. This man has done it village by village.
We installed a computer way back in Hazaribagh. The coconut breaking ceremony was done. It was, I mean, you can imagine, I joined in May '86, and I think June, July I was there, and Mr. Anurag Pandey was DM, and the coconut breaking ceremony, because computer wala aa gaya, naya ladka hai, kya karega, sarkar ko samajhta nahi hai. So we have seen it all and sailed through. Thank you.
MP from Hazaribagh would be coming today.
And now I invite Mr. IPS Sethi, Deputy Director General from National Informatics Center.
So once, Dr. Shefali Das, who was DG NIC, joked with me. She says, NIC is like, maids and ayahs of government of India. We babysit them, but we have never seen. And this man, he's just done such a formidable, everything that you know about India Post, computerization of India, from India Post to Prime Minister's office. This man runs it, not seen, not heard, Mr. IPS Sethi.
He is providing ICT and e-governance enablement to several state governments and ministries in the Government of India. He has handled large projects, particularly developing analytical dashboards such as Prayas for Prime Minister's Office, Digital Payment Dashboard for monitoring cashless transactions, ETAL for monitoring e-transactions, and Darpan Dashboard for monitoring of vital schemes and programs by chief ministers. It was under his guidance that community information centers were set up in 555 blocks of northeastern states, today known as the Common Service Centers. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, SKOCH Foundation. Thank you, Sameer, for recognizing my efforts. And I would like to mention 3-4 things that Sameer talked about the UPI platform and demonetization. I am the one who is monitoring, and last month we recorded 462 crore UPI transaction worth 830 lakh crore, that is $1.1 billion. Country is talking of the $1 trillion economy, and with this pace we hope to achieve in next 3 to 4 years. And every entire universe of digital payment, anything you do for digital payment, be it your Metro card, FASTag, credit card, debit card, NEFT, RTGS, PPIs, everything we record. And this financial year, our target was to have 7,000 crores of digital payment transaction, and already we've achieved 8,200 crores in that universe. And we are getting data from 110 banks, National Payment Corporation of India and Reserve Bank of India, and dashboard, it's monitored by Honorable Prime Minister and the concerned ministries and department. Second thing, that ETAL portal, any transaction happen on service delivery, be it Nagaland or Kanyakumari or Bhuj or Ladakh, if I get a certificate, birth, death, caste, marriage, land record, anything I get on e-governance front, that transaction get recorded, and this portal gets updated every 5 seconds. And we have a 4,000 e-services integrated, and 29 crore transactions are happening every day on this portal. So this is the power of ETAL. When COVID came 2 years ago, Honorable Prime Minister and PMO, they wanted to have a dashboard to monitor the flagship program and functioning of government. So today, 139 important schemes of government with 800 plus KPIs, key performance indicators are integrated on that. And Honorable Prime Minister recognized this effort in the Union Council of Ministers meeting. And my team has gone to all the 77 ministers of the Union Council and given presentation of Prayas, that how the things are moving and what is the output and outcome of various government program. And lastly, under Atmanirbhar Bharat, government is given a clarion call for the Make in India products. And I'm happy to inform that we have developed collab files. Everybody is using Google Docs and Sheets, sharing important information, documents, which goes out of country. So collab files is in-house made, Make in India product, and which we are encouraging people to use so that country do not have to compromise the security of the data. Thank you.
I see Madam is also here. Madam, Satnam, Vaheguru karna tusi ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਦਾ ਹੱਥ ਨਾਲ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਰਹੇ. You come from a pious family.
My family is also there. I would like to invite my son and daughter also to come. And I have now 30 plus years of service and still going on. So many more years to serve in the government. And one thing I share with Iqbal Singh Chahal is that I am also from Thapar University, Patiala. We are a product of Thapar University. So I request my daughter to say.
We are super proud of him. He's like, this award is well deserved. We've seen him, we've seen his thought process through the years, and I think at the end of the day, that's where we aspire to be in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Satnam Vaheguru. Bole So Nihal Sat Sri Akal. Thank you.
She is a homemaker, and she has beautifully taken care of the family and grown up the kids who are doing very good in their respective fields.
God bless you all.
Now we move on to the announcement of the MSME Awards. And I invite Ms. Tanvi Dandavate from Dhruv Consultancy Services. She is the Managing Director. Dhruv Consultancy Services is one of the fastest growing infrastructure consultancy firms in the SME space. It was listed on BSE SME in 2015 and has grown 10 times ever since, with revenues growing at a CAGR of more than 35% and employees growing by more than 2 times from 160 odd to over 350 people today, plus 75% of them being engineers and 35% being women. Dhruv has worked on over 5,000 roads in both DPR and supervision projects and has completed more than 200 projects. Congratulations.
They got listed on BSE SME, and I think from 15 crores they went to about 100 crores, 70 crores. In how long? This little girl, 70 crores, 15 crores to 70 crores in 4 years, just by getting listed.
Thank you so much, Sameerji. It is really a privilege to receive this award from SKOCH Group and amongst such honorable dignitaries. I would really like to thank Shri Ajay Thakur. He is a big factor for our success, and he is really the enabler for MSMEs in India, and salute to his efforts that he takes. And I dedicate this award to my father, because if he hadn't encouraged me to take this position, and I wouldn't have been here today receiving this award. So I dedicate this award to my father. Thank you so much.
Now invite Mr. Saurav Sinha from Brainium Technologies. Brainium Information Technologies was founded in 2009 and is providing end-to-end solutions in the digital ecosystem. Saurav, as its co-founder, has been focusing on client needs and strives to deliver result-oriented solutions. Little wonder, Brainium has become a partner of choice for several large organizations, including Google. What started with barely 3 employees way back in 2009 has grown to be a 200-member strong team, majority being women.
Congratulations. And he keeps SKOCH running. All our IT, Gulshan said a lot of big companies like Google. I thought he was going to say SKOCH.
Thank you, Samirji, and it's a pleasure and an honor to receive this award from you. And congratulations to SKOCH Group for having this forum every year. And another thing is that we talk a lot about unicorn, because what I see, I am the only IT company probably here, not sure. Yeah, non-unicorn, because everybody is talking about unicorn. So we are, but the thing is that we are basically the back-end partners of various unicorns. So like we develop the product till they get the funding, but we are not awarded. So it's great to actually be recognized by SKOCH Group. And one of the things, as he said, that most of the employees being women, and we have a lot of policies which are ladies oriented, which is very different than many of the top IT companies that is there. So hopefully we'll keep carrying on. And this award is on behalf of all my co-founders and the entire group of Branites, which I call the Brainium employees as. So thank you.
So may I now request all the economic awardees and the MSMEs kindly come on stage for a group photograph. MSMEs? Public service, sorry.
Sir is having the long COVID.
Crew, can we start with our show on Chat with Rohan?
Namaskar and welcome to Chat with Rohan, episode 3, in conversation with Dr. Bibek Debroy, Chairman of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister and one of my idols. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, always a pleasure to talk to you.
We're sitting today in this beautiful lawn in Lutyens, Delhi. But what a lot of people may not know about your journey is that at a very young age, you were familiar with pain and suffering. Your family saw the partition, and you did not have what one would call the easiest childhood years.
I grew up in Shillong. I spent the first 10 years of my life in Shillong. My family was uprooted in the course of the partition. My ancestral home is today in what is now Bangladesh. So in 1948, several months after the actual partition, my grandfather sort of walked across, and that's how I grew up in Shillong. Difficult childhood, obviously it was much more traumatic for my grandfather. It was much more traumatic for my father. Certain things one would look at as being difficult. At that particular point in time, I did not perceive them as hardships. Examples of that: we did not have tap water. Water used to come from a well. We do not have toilets in the current sense. It used to be what is called one of those pit latrines. We did not have electricity. Everything had to be done with the light of a lantern. I used to walk to school, which is a distance of about 7 kilometers. In hindsight, many people would define them as deprivation. At that time, I did not feel particularly deprived. It was just part of life. My life changed at the age of 10. It changed at the age of 10 because of two reasons. My father got a promotion, so he was promoted to the Indian Audit and Account Service. Our lives changed because of that. And the second thing that happened is that I got a Government of India scholarship. So the Government of India scholarship changed my life. Do I believe education can change lives? Yes, I do, because I can see that happening in my life, and my life would not have been what it is today had I not had the access to education. So in that sense, yes, I do believe that the social sectors, education and health, are particularly sectors where there's need for government intervention.
What is your vision for a new India that universal access to education and good healthcare for all will create?
One needs to have an India that is a prosperous India, that is a more developed India, and one can see the signs of that happening. Question, of course, is how do we define that development, how do we define that progress, and what is the timeline for that? So one possible way of defining it, the traditional way that economists always do that, is what percentage rate of growth, and that rate of growth always translates into a per capita income. So we also need to look at what kind of human development we achieve in the process. In the process of doing this, we need to have more efficient labor markets, we need to have more efficient land markets, we need to have more efficient capital markets, and we need to have productivity.
What many people may not know about you is that in addition to being a prolific author, authored no less than 100 books, you are also a voracious reader. You write in your book, Making of a New India, and you have always been a champion of participatory democracy at the last mile in India. What is the role that Jan Shakti and Jan Bhagidari are playing in the making of a new India?
There are certain things we expect government to do. And when we say government, there are three layers of government. People think of government and people immediately think of union government, and within that people immediately think of the executive arm of union government. But in government as defined by the Constitution, there are three different organs of state. There is the executive, there is the legislature, and there is the judiciary. Similarly, there are three layers of government. There is union government, there is state government, and there is local government. Local government has led to a tremendous sense of empowerment, at least in a social sense. The 75th Independence Day speech from Red Fort, the Prime Minister used the expression Sabka Prayas. And the Constitution also begins, the preamble also begins with the expression we the people. So India will not become a better governed country only because of what government does. It will become a better governed country because of what we as citizens do, the Sabka Prayas part of it. And therefore, indeed, it is in the interests of individuals to make India a better economy and a better society. India is a very, very heterogeneous country, spatially. We get a sense of that when we look at the states, and SKOCH Foundation has been in the business of ranking states on different parameters, but states are administrative boundaries. Deprivation and development do not necessarily respect administrative boundaries. So in purely relative terms, there are parts of India that are still disadvantaged and deprived. And since May 2014, a lot has been done by the present government, and I'm using the two terms as synonymous, the two terms of the government as synonymous, to provide basic necessities. We must realize that if I use purchasing power parity and to convert per capita income, a place like Chandigarh has a PPP per capita income that is like that in Europe. But there are parts of India that have PPP per capita incomes that are in the category of what are known as LDCs. So the vision that all of us should have for India is an integration of these parts of India into the trajectory of growth and development.
What is your vision for a globally competitive India? With the world moving towards digital technologies, how do you see the dream of $1 trillion digital economy coming to life?
Competition has many different sources. It depends on levels of development. At some point in the future, beyond 2035, India is also going to become old. This so-called demographic dividend is not going to last forever. At different levels of development, as they move up the ladder, different countries tap different sectors for their competitive advantage. All said and done, as of today, we are still a relatively more labor abundant economy, which logically means that the price of labor in relative terms will be cheaper than the price of capital and technology. So I'm not talking about niches, forget the niches, but otherwise in the next 15 odd years, the primary source of competitiveness for India, regardless of the state, will be in terms of its ability to make efficient usage of the resource that we have in plenty, which is labor. As we move up the ladder, then the focus shifts to technology and competitiveness.
What do you see as the incremental policy changes that would help India achieve this dream?
Incremental policy changes by who? And this also comes back to the question of what do we expect government to do. The social sectors are by and large the province of the states. Health is entirely a state subject. Education, a large part of it is actually a state subject. But I would like to see greater attention to the legal system and its inability to deliver efficiently, a greater attention to the legislative system, because these, after all, are part of the framework on which all of our policies rest. These are based on the Constitution.
Thank you very much for taking the time to spend this morning with us on Chat with Rohan. It's been an honor and a privilege to speak to you this morning, as I'm sure it has for several other young Indians. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Rohan.
So by now you all must be wondering, with both Rohan and Vivek talking, how can it end in 9 minutes? It doesn't. The library version is 40 minutes, the television version is 20 minutes, and the conference version is 9 minutes because everyone is hungry. But with that, we move on to the next step of our awards, the final leg.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure of announcing the Lifetime Achievement Award for Economics that goes to Dr. Vivek Debroy.
Vivek.
He is a visionary economist who has written extensively on economic growth, covering the entire gamut from legal reforms to railway reforms. He was consultant to the Department of Economic Affairs and worked on legal adjustments and reforms for Globalizing the Economy project by Finance Ministry and UNDP. He was the rapporteur for implementation in the Commission on Legal Empowerment for the Poor. Not only at the center, even states have been the beneficiaries of his expertise, including Jharkhand, Rajasthan, Jammu and Kashmir, and Gujarat. He chaired the committee to restructure Indian Railways. With more than 100 books and many more in the pipe, Debroy is a teacher at heart and believes in the decentralization and economic growth with the last person in the queue. Congratulations.
I'd like very briefly Janji, Amar Patnaik ji and Kulmeet to join me on stage for a photo opportunity, and Suparna, while I share some stuff about Vivek. You know, they talk about ordinary people with extraordinary lives. I think Vivek is a shining example of that. He has been a friend, philosopher and guide for many years. I am not educated. My qualification is still class 12. He taught me how to be a think tank. He taught me how to do research. He taught me how to edit books, and he taught me how to write books. When we went to Lahore, everyone has this feeling about, you know, there's this stereotype of Bengalis that they are soft people. He was the only one who had the courage to accompany me to my ancestral home in Lahore with ISI right behind us. We've had many lifetime award achievement winners. I recall two for one reason. One is Dr. C. Rangarajan. The other is Dr. Vivek Kelkar, where I felt so small giving them the award that I had to call help from so many others to come and support it because I am not big enough to award you. And to acknowledge their receiving the award, I touched their feet. This is the third time in the history of SKOCH Award I'm going to do that. Vivek is 67 years old. He's not old enough for me to touch his field, but he's my guru. Vivek, bless you. We'll all wait here. No, you'll talk. You wait.
Thank you, Samir Kocher. And the SKOCH Foundation, thank you, Samir, for those very, very kind words. The SKOCH Foundation has always been very kind towards me. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A Lifetime Achievement Award. What is life? It is preparation for death. What is death? It is preparation for life. So one can be philosophical about what is life and about this cycle of samsara. Avaktadini bhutani vaktamadhyani bharata vaktanidhanani eva tatra ka paridevana. Most people are familiar with that. I don't have to translate it. But for most of us mortals, we interpret life not quite in that philosophical sense. I am not quite midnight's child because I was born several years after independence. As the short video clip showed, I was born in Shillong, which was the capital of undivided Assam then. And as the video clip also showed, I am where I am today because of access to education. Shillong of today
is not Shillong of those days. In those days, Shillong and even the Northeast in general was bypassed, marginalized. All of that has changed because of physical connectivity. And the fact that my career happened to be mainstream was because of that access to education. I'm not Midnight's child, as I said. What was the life expectancy in India at the time of independence in 1947? There is no satisfactory answer, because our statistical systems did not enable us to compute life expectancy then. In the 1940s, the only instance I have been able to find of some figure on life expectancy was a book that is no longer read. For its time, it was a very good book by Minu Masani called Our India. And in Our India, the average Indian's life expectancy was given as 27 years. Excuse me. Then we had the census, and independent India's life expectancy went up to 31 years. Those two figures are not quite comparable. One was for British India, did not include the princely states. The other one was for independent India. I like to think, which is statistically not quite correct, that India's life expectancy went up because Pakistan went away. But anyway, life expectancy of 31. Compared to that, here am I, and you've already been told I'm 67 years old. I've lived a fairly long time. The trouble with a lifetime award tends to suggest that, hey, you've lived long enough, now get out of the way. There's a senior economist, I will not mention his name, all of you are familiar with him, and by the way, I'm not talking about Montek, who once told me several years ago, Bibek, when I was 50, I used to think, when will these old fogies get out of the way? And now that I'm 70, I think I still have such a lot to contribute. And I repeat, I'm not talking about Monte. But somehow this lifetime achievement award, it does tend to suggest that someone wishes you to exit. Although in fairness to Samir, this is not the first time I am getting a Lifetime Achievement Award. I think it's the third time. And also in fairness to Samir, earlier on, we saw that several people have been inflicted with Lifetime Achievement Awards by the SKOCH Foundation and have lived to tell the tale. The latest example being Dr. Rangarajan, who was conferred a Lifetime Achievement Award some 15 years ago, and yesterday we celebrated his 90th birthday. 67 years is India's average life expectancy today for males. For women, it's a little bit more. So in an average sense, yes, it is time for me to exit. But averages are average indicators. If you catch hold of me, put one of my feet inside a fridge and the other one inside a microwave, on an average, I will be comfortable. So averages can be misleading, and yes, the life expectancy at birth is 67, but if you look at the life expectancy at the age of 67, I still have some years to go. In our traditional texts, there are things that are referred to as sanskaras. These are thresholds in life. A sanskara is a certain threshold that you come to at some point in life. The listing varies a bit, but generally there are 16 sanskaras. And no, getting a SKOCH award is not one of them. Our text did not anticipate a SKOCH award. One of these sanskaras is called Sahasra Chandra Darshanam. Sahasra Chandra Darshanam, seeing 1,000 moons, seeing 1,000 full moons. So when you have actually seen 1,000 full moons, then you've come to an important threshold in your life. We normally tend to think that there is one full moon every month, and therefore that 1,000 full moon, Sahasra Chandra Darshanam, translates into something like 83 years. Not quite correct, because sometimes there might be two Purnimas in the same month. So the Sahasra Chandra Darshanam actually happens at the age of 81.3 years. So I'm bargaining with the SKOCH Foundation and arguing that for God's sake, I still have some 15, 16 odd years left. If I look back at my life, it has been a bit of a roller coaster with all kinds of twists and turns, starting with Shillong. When I was at the age of 20, like several people who are young, I wanted to take on the world. So at the age of 20, I wanted to take on the world. By the time I attained the age of 40, I realized that instead of my taking on the world had taken me on. When I attained the age of 60, I realized that it didn't matter one way or the other. And now that I am heading towards that 81.3 years, I am heading towards the realization that both I and the world are illusions. In the course of my life, which as I said has been full of twists and turns, I have met several people. I have traveled part of that journey with all kinds of people. They have helped me achieve whatever I have achieved today, and eventually they have drifted apart. In the Mahabharata, there is a shloka which says that this is just like logs of wood floating around on the ocean. They travel together for a short while and then they drift apart. That is life. Jatha kashthang cha sametang mahadadhau sametta cha vepetang tatbat bhuta samagava. The relationship between human beings is also just like that. And that's been my experience as well. However, in all of this, there is one person who has not drifted away. There is one person who shall not drift away, and that person has been the support, the foundation, the Sahadharmini behind everything that I have been able to do and will continue to do. I am, of course, referring to my wife. I am referring, of course, to my wife, Suparna. And I'm going to end by quoting one of my favorite poets. He was my favorite poet in any case, but I'm particularly quoting him now because Mr. Patnaik is here. And this time I'm not going to translate. And I'm talking about Jayadeva and Gito Govindam and the 19th Ashtapadi in Jayadeva's Gito Govindam. And I will not translate. Tvamasi mama bhushanang, tvamasi mama jivanang, tvamasi mama bhava jaladhi ratnam. Bhavatu bhavati hamai satat manurodhini tatra mama hridayam ati jatnam. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Scotch, for showing me this great honor.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Debroy. That was quite a scholarly insight into the alternative work, which is what you have been doing, translating all the Upanishads, Puranas, Vedas. You already completed Mahabharata and Ramayana, and much more to come, of course. Thank you very much. We move on to the announcement for the Parliamentarian of the Year, and I have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Amar Patnaik, Rajya Sabha. Dr. Patnaik is an astute administrator, a highly skilled researcher, and a global-minded, India-focused leader in search of practical solutions to grassroots problems. He had a long career in civil services and was associated with the United Nations and the World Bank for global external audit assignments. It is for his love to serve the people at the bottom of the pyramid he quit and joined the Biju Janata Dal, representing the state in the Rajya Sabha. He was member of the Joint Committee of Parliament on the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 and ensured that the bill goes through an extensive process of clause-wise consideration during the consultation within the JPC. As Rajya Sabha member, he is Odisha's voice in the Parliament. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Dr. Amar Patnaik. You often lament, why don't we get good politicians? But here is a shining example of a good politician, well-researched, well-read, with the feelings for the poor of India at his heart. He works for a chief minister, who's the finest chief minister. He's a gentleman and a politician, not very visible, not very vocal, and it is his job to make it vocal, make him visible, and make sure that Odisha matters, and he has done a formidable job on that.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, SKOCH Foundation, for this incredible recognition. I'm really moved, honored, and humbled as well. As he said, one of the primary reasons for me moving out from the civil services to join politics, in fact 10 years ahead of my retirement, was to solve this problem of inequity that we see. Inequity has been the central point, the focus point of all my research, which I subsequently did a doctoral work on power asymmetries, and then I realized that power asymmetries are at the core of this inequity. We find inequity not only in the social sphere, not only in the economic growth areas, but even in cultural, even in opportunities, skill, everywhere you find this inequity. What our Gini coefficient ordinarily captures is the economic inequity. And you'd be pretty surprised to find that our Gini coefficient, despite our GDP growth, has only been increasing. The inequity in our society has only been increasing. And the largest rise, the jump in inequity, was between 2000 to 2006. Since Dr. Debroy is here, and the the chairman of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, my senior Jayant Sinhaji, who is the chairman of the Standing Committee on Finance, in which I am also a member, I would request that this is something that we have to address. We talk about climate change. Anytime there would be a climate change or any kind of impact of climate change, the biggest sufferers would be the poor people. So the inequity gets perpetuated. So this award I dedicate to the people of Orissa who have faced this problem of inequity all their lives, whether it is in democratic decentralization and transfer of resources, whether it is in terms of facing the cyclone after cyclone. You know, you'd be surprised to know there are about 90 disasters that Orissa has faced in the last 100 years. Every year, a couple of cyclones or super cyclones. And this is also dedicated to my leader, which Sameerji spoke about, who has always inspired me on this issue of inequity. He has always told all party men that politics is not a passion for power, it's a passion to serve the people. In fact, you would be surprised to know that one of our goals in the party's executive committee that was resolution that was passed was to reach out to the people for blood donation, to reach out to people to bury the dead. You know, you don't have the hearse vans in the rural areas. In fact, when we had the pandemic in those two phases, there was a tremendous dearth of blood in our state. The way it was done was collection of blood from all our party workers, volunteers, and we created a record in that. So this is what has spurred me. The SKOCH Foundation is one of the key elements of their, I think, they're the key elements of their existence is growth, livelihoods, and equity. So this is why I really admire SKOCH Foundation for the work that they are doing. I value this award for this work which they are doing on equity, and I remain committed to work on this issue of inequity in society. I am once again thankful to SKOCH Foundation for this award. It would actually spur me to work even harder on these issues, raise the issues not only for Orissa, for India, and for the entire world, because we are all global citizens. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amar. He comes from such a nice and loving family. I wish his family was here. His wife works for a steel company. His daughter is a lawyer, studying to a lawyer. And what I respect the most, he's a thinking politician. He's a politician whom corruption cannot touch. He's in Rajya Sabha. Please stand up and give him an ovation. He comes from a very clean state with a heart. God bless you.
Our Parliamentarian of the Year from Lok Sabha is Mr. Jayant Sinha. He has participated in Indian politics and policy making as Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Minister of State for Finance, and as Member of Parliament. He has piloted key legislations and introduced several private members' bills in the Parliament. He now chairs an important parliamentary committee on finance, which is the foremost parliamentary authority addressing several areas of great importance and growth impetus for India, such as the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, NPAs for financial institutions, policy on new licenses in the banking sector. It was him who, during the Vajpayee government, took initiatives such as the mortgage interest rate deduction and introduction of Saral form to file income tax returns with ease. It dramatically improved tax compliance. He has been active in Hazaribagh since 1998 and worked on a variety of projects in Hazaribagh and Ramgarh districts, such as fostering self-help groups, tribal development, improving drinking water quality, and getting the village roads built. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Janji. Now you all must be familiar with the statement when television crew goes to a constituency and asks them कि आपके सांसद कहाँ हैं, and the answer is पता नहीं जी पिछले इलेक्शन में मिले थे. But he's one parliamentarian ever since he's represented Hazaribagh constituency, which is earlier was with his father. Every year has gone on to which a SKOCH award. So he's not just doing his duty in the parliament, he is doing his duty to his people, and a very few of them. This is the first time in the history of SKOCH award that the father got the SKOCH Challenger award and the son is getting one too. Fathers and sons have difficult relationships. Trust me, I have two of them. But he is more than filling up some very, very big boots. It is a very complex time for India. We are talking about Amrit Bela, 100 years of independence by 2047. We have very complex challenges, specifically in IT, in finance, whether crypto should be allowed, not should be allowed, what should be the PDP bill, should not be a PDP bill. And about the only person who has the intellectual capability to abdicate, take a balanced view, not swing, is Jansen. Congratulations to you, sir.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद समीर जी, और मैं पूरे स्कॉच परिवार को मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं कि आप लोगों ने मुझे इस प्रतिष्ठित पुरस्कार को आज दिया है। और कई लोग मुझसे पूछते हैं जब वो मेरा बैकग्राउंड जानते हैं कि भाई आपने सब छोड़कर राजनीति आपने क्यों किया, आप राजनीति में क्यों आए, तो मुझे उन्हें बताना पड़ता है कि मेरा जो मूल मंत्र है, मेरे जीवन का जो मूल मंत्र है, और अभी श्री विवेक देवरॉय जी ने बताया कि भाई हमें कैसे जीना चाहिए और हमारे ग्रंथों में क्या हम लोगों को प्रेरणा मिलती है, क्या हम लोगों को इस तरीके से गाइडेंस मिलता है। तो मेरा मूल मंत्र यही है, सेवा परमो धर्म, सेवा परमो धर्म। और अगर मैं सेवा कर पाता हूं तो इसके दो कारण हैं। एक कारण तो यह है कि हजारीबाग और रामगढ़ की जनता ने मुझे बहुत आशीर्वाद दिया है। 2 बार मैंने चुनाव वहां से लड़े हैं, 2019 में और 2014 में, और दोनों बार रिकॉर्ड मार्जिन से मेरी जीत हुई है। खासकर 2019 में 4,78,000 वोट से मुझे उन्होंने आशीर्वाद दिया, मुझे जिताया। तो एक कारण कि मैं सेवा कर पाता हूं कि हजारीबाग और रामगढ़ की जनता का आशीर्वाद मिलता है, और दूसरा जो मेरा सेवा में मेरा जो सहारा है वो मेरी धर्मपत्नी पुनीता जी हैं, जो यहाँ मौजूद हैं आज। और इसलिए ये जो आज आप लोगों ने इतना मुझे बड़ा पुरस्कार दिया है, मैं इसको हजारीबाग और रामगढ़ की जनता को और अपनी धर्मपत्नी को मैं समर्पित करता हूं। आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
पुनीता जी, मैं आपको आमंत्रित करूंगा, आप ऊपर आएँ, कुछ कहानियां मैं आपकी भी बताऊं, आपको नहीं मालूम होगा। पुनीता जी जो हैं अन्नपूर्णा हैं, इनके घर में गया था मैं पहली दफ़े जब गया। पुनीता जी मेरे मित्र की की बहन है, रोहित इनके भाई का नाम है, वो शायद ना जानती हूँ, बट रोहित कुमार, दुबई में उनको भी अवार्ड मिल रहा है। टैलेंटेड फैमिली, क्या कर सकते हैं तो उनको कुछ एजुकेशन के लिए अवार्ड मिल रहा है। तो रोहित ने मुझे भेजा इनके घर शूटिंग करने के लिए। हम डॉक्यूमेंट्री फिल्म बना रहे थे स्वदेशी रिफॉर्मर यशवंत सिन्हा जी के लिए, और बहुत फिल्म बनाई है। और मतलब अमूमन रह जाता है कि आप फिल्म बनाने जा रहे हैं, इंटरव्यू कर रहे हैं, तो लोगों को ध्यान नहीं रहता कि आप लोग सुबह से खड़े हैं, आपने कुछ खाया है कि नहीं खाया। पहली दफ़े इन्होंने मुझे चॉकलेट एक्लेयर और पेस्ट्री खिलाई। इनके बेटे की मैंने शूटिंग करी, वो साइकिल चला रहा था, वो अभी भी फिल्म में है। और ये अन्नपूर्णा माँ ऐसी है कि इनको पता लगा कि आदमी सुबह से खड़ा इंटरव्यू ले रहा है, मेरे ससुर का कुछ खाया नहीं है, तो इन्होंने खाना खिलाया। तो अन्नपूर्णा सुखी भव। एंड हाउ डू यू लिव विद अ हस्बैंड हु डजंट ईट?
He's always in the constituency, so I think he's always surrounded by the people, and that gives him so much happiness that I think he forgets to eat.
God bless you both.
So that brings us to the end of the announcements. May I now request for a group photograph? No. Dr. Debroy, Dr. Amar Patnaik, and
then we'll have a party, big party.
Jan Sinha ji, aap bhi aaye. Rohan, can you join us?
India works because of these guys. तो थैंक यू वेरी मच। अब आपको पता होगा मेरे दो बेटे हैं, बड़ा बेटा है इकोनॉमिक्स और लॉ वाली जो मेरी आधी चीज़ है वो उसके पास चलेगी, दूसरी चीज़ जो ये वाली है खाने वाली वो मेरे छोटे बेटे सायन के पास है। तो इसने बहुत मेहनत करके इसके लिए मैंने फूड का काम शुरू किया है एंड आई रियलाइज दैट द रूट टू एवरी वंस हार्ट इज फ्रॉम द स्टमक, ओल्ड एडाज। तो वो इकोनॉमिक लॉ पढ़ाता रहेगा, ये अच्छा अच्छा खाना खिलाता रहेगा। वुड यू लाइक टू इनवाइट?
Thank you all for joining us today. I would like to congratulate all the awardees, and I would now request you all to join me for a specially curated meal. Thank you.
There are 40 dishes on lunch. I have personally with Sayan made sure that they're all good. There is an unlimited bar. And the show stealer, because 40 में पता नहीं लगा क्या खाना है, एक छेना मैंगो का दही बल्ला है वो जरूर खा के जाना, बनारस का है। सोंठ नहीं है उसमें, मैंगो की उसके अंदर चटनी है और छेने का वो भल्ला है और बाकी सब कुछ भी बहुत अच्छा है। प्लस प्लीज जॉइन अस, वी हैव टाइम टिल 4 o'clock टू ईट एंड ड्रिंक एंड बी मेरी। गॉड ब्लेस यू ऑल, प्लीज कम।